things that happens when we have somebody in our family who becomes quite ill with a serious mental illness is to somehow think that we caused it as parents, or that something happened in our lives that caused the illness. None of us really know why these illnesses happened. There could well be some background in families or genetics. We don't always know. But what I do know is how I felt. I initially blamed myself, and I went through quite a period of internal distress. I couldn't talk it with anybody. I didn't want to say much to anybody, and I kept it within myself. And most of it was because the boy who became ill was my fifth child, and I at the time had four, two girls, two boys, and I wasn't over excited at having another baby. And I felt that he got messages from me while he was in utero. A very strange thing that we might sort of think about, but nevertheless it caused me a lot of grief. But the interesting thing was when I talked to his dad and I said, look, we're going to have another baby. He smiled gently and he said, well, Carl, he said, don't worry about it. We'll manage, because he was thinking I was upset because financially we may not cope with it, because we never had much money, but we always scraped through. But it wasn't, he didn't realise why I was so distressed about it. And he then said to me, quite with his wit again, he said, listen, he said, and I must say, in those days we didn't have sliced bread. We had loaves of bread. And he said, listen, Kelly, we'll cut this loaf of bread in 7 pieces instead of 6. How's that? And he went on and he said, that's all right. He said, my biggest problem is telling my mates at the club that we're having another baby. That was his biggest problem. So I think the blame that I had was sensed by my children. And my eldest son actually was at university at the time, and he is very perceptive, and he knew how I was feeling. He didn't know the reasons, but he knew I had this feeling of blame. And he organised me to go to a session with a gentleman who was a businessman actually, who'd suffered some crisis in his life. I've forgotten all the details. But he had a session, and there were 3 nights where we went. And he gave us some strategies on how to actually try and manage our stress. Of course, these kind of sessions aren't for everybody, but they were arranged in a way for people like myself, for example, who were trying to work through why we felt blame and guilt. And I remember he wanted us to be very quiet, and in his way, he wanted us to think back a very happy time with the person that we were feeling that we had blame for. By the time I went, I was beginning to start to feel happier. My daughter had another little child, and I had a grandson for the first time. So some of my blame was subsiding a bit, but nevertheless the core of it was there. And he made us really think of a beautiful time that we had with our person who we thought we caused and we blamed ourselves for. And I remembered my boy who was diagnosed with the illness that I worried about when I was pregnant with him, and I brought to my mind a beautiful picture of me sitting in a rocking chair, an old rocking chair. His dad was behind me playing his music, and he was playing a little lullaby. The other 4 children were making a bit of noise in front of us, and I was breastfeeding this little baby, 3 months old, and he was suckling at my breast, and I could hear these gulps of milk as he was swallowing, which is a rather delicious thing to hear. And I knew then that I wasn't to blame, that these things happen in life, and I treasured him as much as I did the others. So all of us, if we do have feelings of blame and guilt, and some of it has come, I think, because many years ago, a lot of the medical profession, the psychiatric professions, often blamed mothers that it was the way we brought up our children that caused them to have illness. And so there was a label put on us as mothers, and maybe I had read something about this, who knows, I don't really know. But all I do know that no matter what we do in our lives, we do things and we make mistakes, and we do good things and we do bad things. But we have to learn to be able to get through these things and work through them and see the better sides of things. And even today, when I'm feeling a little bit down sometimes, and I can see my son now, he'll be 51 in a few weeks' time, and he's cooking for me, or he's going down the street to do the shopping, or he's answering the phone and he speaks in such a beautiful way. And I feel so sad because I think what could have been, who knows what could have been or what he would have been able to do. And recently in the book Shedding the Black Coat that was written, he talks in his interview with the author Jill, where he said, schizophrenia has ruined my life. Well, it has in many ways. He hasn't achieved what he could have been. He hasn't achieved what we as parents would have wanted for him. He hasn't got the kind of successes that his brothers and sisters has. But he does have a life. He's accepted his condition and he can smile a lot now. And on Sunday, when one of his brothers was telling us a funny story, he laughed so much he nearly fell off the chair. And I think that was a great reward for me.